All right, music fans, welcome back. Harmless me here talking real music in real time for a few real people out there just like you right there, just like me right here. All right, the Allman Betts Band. If you haven't heard these guys, bless your heart. that's a that's a phrase in the South that it's a little on the condescending. It's a friendly way to be condescending in the South. Really? You didn't know there are other alternative treatments? Bless your heart. Anyway, these guys, the pedigree is right here. This is a continuation of the Allman Brothers legacy. The offspring is it Dwayne Betts. This gets really tricky. And Devin Allman and Dwayne Betts. And pretty much a holy crap Batman all the way around. If you haven't heard these guys, this is kind of a no-brainer, and it's pure classic rock. Yes, new material, but if you go out and see this band, you're probably going to hear like Blue Sky, and your mouth will hang open when they start doing it. Dwayne Betts channeling his dad and channeling Devin's. Is it Devin's dad or is it Devin's uncle? Either way, it's mind-blowing. So please check it out. You know what else is mind-blowing? D. Snider, man. Oh, he's one of my favorite guys. You know why? D was amazing. When the world locked down a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, D was right there. He was right there telling people, hey, don't move. Don't move. Stay at home. Don't go anywhere. Make sure you go to CVS multiple times. And if you don't, you know, if you're one of these rock and roll rebels, if you're Van Morrison, I'm going to call you out. And he did over and over again, and used some really condescending and angry verbiage toward people who were a little bit concerned that maybe the government was taking away just a little bit of our freedom. So screw your freedom. Screw your freedom. What was that? Arnold Schwarzenegger said, screw your freedom. Yeah, there's a reason he's the Terminator, right? He wants more people to be terminated. I will terminate you. But yeah, so D. Snider, who's already one of my favorite people, is now going after Ronnie James Dio and Robert Plant, okay? Basically saying that, yeah, they're pretty good vocalists, right? They're talented vocalists, yes. But as far as their frontman status, fronting the band, Ronnie James Dio and Robert Plant, yeah, they're kind of so-so. They just kind of stood there and they didn't do all that much. Now, Robert Plant's still around. I would say these days, Robert is kind of more stationary than he used to be. But I've watched a lot of Ronnie James Dio footage, and that guy wasn't just, you know, standing around doing nothing. That guy was on par with a Freddie Mercury as far as his stage presence. It's not just if you move around or if you look like you're really active. It's not like you have to do cartwheels on stage, D, which I don't recall you doing. You know, but D went before Congress, and he was really amazing when he called out all of that evil censorship of pornography and, you know, foul language. Thank goodness for D. Snider for doing that for us, keeping Two Live Crew on not on the radio, but, you know, those labels that they had to slap those albums with. Look, I'm a free speech purist. I technically agree with what he did back in the 80s or whenever that took place, early 90s, I can't remember. The two-hit wonder went before Congress. Yeah, I know there was Leader of the Pack too, right? So maybe 3 hits, although that's not a Twisted Sister composition. That was a bizarre remake. Anyway, yeah, he went before Congress, right? Wasn't about political speech, wasn't about the kind of censorship on important issues that we are experiencing now. you can't disagree with D. Snider on his views with regard to the thing and going and getting the thing, going to CVS or Walgreens or Rite Aid multiple times. You can't disagree with D on that, or he's going to call you out. So, yeah, there's a lot of hypocrisy. That's the word. And it's interesting. Again, he made these comments trying to explain his views on being a frontman versus just being a good vocalist. And he's inferring that Robert Plant and Ronnie James Dio are just good singers. All right. Now, Ronnie James Dio, unfortunately, is not here to defend himself because he's dead. Okay. But anybody who hung with Ronnie James Dio, and by the way, you could just look at the footage. You could just go back. There are concerts that are uploaded, and you will see a very active and involved Ronnie James Dio. As far as Robert Plant goes, back in the early days of Led Zeppelin, yeah, he was pretty active on stage. He was kind of a lunatic. He probably wasn't as active as Ronnie James Dio, but especially in the early days of Zepp, I mean, everybody in that band is pretty stoked on stage. And Robert Plant, of course, was a great frontman. Now, you know, Roger Daltrey might be a better frontman than Robert Plant, and Ronnie James Dio might be a better frontman than either one of them. Freddie Mercury might be a better frontman than all three of those guys. But the point that he's making is that they were kind of so-so as frontmen, and they just kind of stood around. And that's not the case. That's a blanket statement, and it's not accurate. Ronnie James Dio, hard to really say that about him and not just take some blowback for that, because it's just not true. So I'm not sure. A lot of times I think some of these guys will throw bombs like this and they'll get in the news and they'll get some attention because what is Twisted Sister up to these days? Not sure. What's D. Snider doing? Is he touring? I thought he announced he wasn't going to tour anymore. I mean, I don't really keep up with the stuff that he says regarding his music career because he's always spouting off about these issues, and it seems as though he doesn't know what he's talking about. He's very pro war in Ukraine too. Add that to the list of great things that D is cool with. Let's send another $55 billion to Ukraine while people on Sanibel Island look at their pile of rubble in their front yard or what used to be their house. People in Fort Myers on the beach looking at piles of wood and stone and stuff that used to be either their business or their house, but we'll just keep sending money to a foreign country. We need to send tanks, right? We got to send more tanks. I'm sure D is cool with arming Ukraine to the hilt so we can fully get into World War III, because that's a good idea, right? What happened to all the rebels? Yeah, going back to Van Morrison, he asked that question. Where have all the rebels gone? Mild-mannered Van Morrison ends up being the rebel, and D. Snider is a bomb thrower, but he's throwing bombs at the wrong things and the wrong people. Really? Ronnie James Dio was a so-so kind of okay frontman. He actually, I think, said they weren't great performers. Here's a little insight, D. It's about the music first and foremost. It's not about the show. The show is kind of like an added bonus. If you're a good band and you play good music that people can sing along to or that people can relate to or whatever, right? And you guys are all in tune, the guitars are good, the drums, I mean, you know, it makes sense to your ears when you go and listen to it. That's job one. Now, if you happen to be kind of a talented band on top of that, as far as your presentation, that's a bonus. Some people will go see bands because they like the way they sound. The Eagles, for instance, didn't move on stage. They barely moved at all, but yet what? Maybe the most popular American band in history. People aren't going to see, Don Henley jumping off the drum risers, okay? Hopefully he can still play drums, and that's what most people are concerned about. Is he really playing those drums? It looks like he is. Does the music sound good? Yes. In the case of these metal bands, yeah, there's more theatrics going on, and I guess the metal fans are really concerned about some of the presentation. If you're a Kiss fan, you're going to see the show. You're really not that concerned about the music. I'm kind of the other way around. I want to hear the music. I'm not that concerned about the show. All right. Dee Snider made his living on being a showman, having great onstage presence. I don't deny that he's good at that. But after about 3 songs, I'm kind of done with Twisted Sister. You know what I mean? Keep going. Maybe some of those songs will come to life because of the performance. That's great if that's what you want to do, right? But there is more to this than just being a good frontman. And to throw stones at the late, great Ronnie James Dio, that offends me more than the Robert Plant thing for some reason. I understand that Plant later on in his career was way more stoic, especially as a solo artist. Okay, so I mean, why pick a fight when there's no fight really to be had? I mean, just say, hey, these guys were great singers and they were great performers. In the case of Robert Plant, he's still there, still hanging out with various people. Of course, not with Zeppelin. We've begged and pleaded, but there's going to be no Led Zeppelin reunion unless Robert Plant isn't the singer. That's what I'm thinking, which would be sacrilegious and blasphemous. Anyway, folks, it's just the typical Dee Snider stuff. If it's not just really twisted takes on war and politics, then it's now this, I guess if you want to keep yourself in the media, in the news, then I've seen about 10 rock websites that I peruse carry this, and I wasn't even going to look at it. But then I read it and I'm like, really? He's running down Ronnie James Dio and Robert Plant. Okay. And apparently he doubled down and tried to explain that he's in a different category. You can't compare me to those 2 guys. Oh, okay. You're the best, Dee. So, I mean, what else can you get from that? He's the best. So yeah, I don't know. You hit a certain age, and I'm definitely there. I think I was there a few years ago, where some of this stuff just doesn't register anymore. It's not important. I guess you get into these little groups where it's really important to talk about, how much makeup somebody wears on stage or what kind of gear they're saddling up with. I guess I'm implying that some of these guys are like horses, right? I don't really care. I mean, the show is cool, and it was cooler when I was younger. It's not a big deal anymore. I mean, you tend to grow out of this stuff unless you're a Kiss fan, and then you're in it for life, and you're just, yeah, man, bring on the show, bring on the circus. So I'm into the music. Dee Snider, the catalog between Ronnie James Dio and Robert Plant, I mean, you'd be going to like an 8-hour concert between the 2 of those guys. Take all of Plant's solo material and then the Led Zeppelin stuff, and then maybe Ronnie James Dio opens with some of his Black Sabbath stuff and then his solo material. I mean, that would go on for a long time, and it would be a very entertaining show, both because the music is great, and I think those 2 gentlemen could certainly put on a good show. The late, great Ronnie James Dio and the old geezer, Robert Plant. Anyway, folks, figured I'd weigh in on this, give you my cold take. It's just funny what people will say about you after you're just throwing your opinion out there. And hey, you know, free speech is a cool thing. It would be nice if D would get on board with, say, protesting against medical tyranny, maybe being a little anti-war. That might be helpful, but none of these guys do that stuff anymore. I guess it's because they're getting paid maybe by somebody, or they don't want to upset the apple cart. They don't want to actually be a front man when it comes to the culture. They just want to sit in the background and say all the same stuff, which is really boring. Um, I guess if you don't have a belief system, then you're not going to speak out on anything. Anyway, speaking of beliefs, I believe in this really great album by the Allman Betts Band. Bless your heart. That's what we'll say to D. D. Snider, bless your heart, man. Anyway, thanks for watching, folks. I'll see you soon.